Welcome to the TTS Talking Early Years podcast. Each week we'll be joined by educational experts from across the globe who are going to offer insights, inspiration and guidance to help practitioners unlock potential for learning in the early years. Welcome back everyone to the TTS Talking Early Years podcast. I am here today with Ann-Marie Christensen again, and we're talking all things safeguarding. So in this episode, we're going to explore some of the challenges and common issues that we as educators face when we think about safeguarding in the early years. So Ann-Marie, what are your thoughts on, talking about common issues? We did touch a little bit in episode 1 about how there are quite wide-ranging issues that arise around safeguarding, but are there any that are particularly common or that people should be looking out for?
Yeah, so when I worked with the particular age group 0 to 5 in safeguarding, we seem to forget that these, and we see it a lot in case reviews. So we know from the COVID deaths we had with Star, Logan, Arthur, and even baby Crouch the other day that we heard on the news about an 11-month-old baby, etc. Or could be 10-month-old, but I remember the baby definitely under the 12 months old. There's an element of non-verbal, sometimes non-mobile, in the sense of how they can communicate and talk about and express concern, but also them knowing what they're experiencing is actually of concern. So it's definitely something about those little people being dependent on the adults around them to keep them safe. And think about it, you're born into a family where your natural family around you is the first experience you have. And that's normal to you until you go to a different environment where you see how other people are. And in early years, you're one of the only few professionals who see children at such a young age, and think about statutory age group being 5, etc. So It's really important that what we're looking out for is that child, going back to your question about the challenge, we're expecting, and I saw this quite a lot as an 0 to 5 social work manager in that team, we expect and make assumptions that the child has been fed appropriately, is sleeping safely, is clean, provided care and shelter, and have safe people around them. And it's really important that the child there is so reliant in relation to life and limb of existing, of good care. And without that, our concerns would be the worst. So we need to be very vigilant. Going back to your challenge, if a child, whether you're any of those colleagues who work within 0 to 5, the younger the child, the more vigilant we must be, because obviously the less communicative they are.
I think in the first episode we talked about changes in behaviour, so the fact that both of us in our careers had noticed children who had change in behaviour. But if we are welcoming a child into our setting for whom this is the norm, then you're not going to see a change in behaviour. So I think it's when behaviour then stands outside what your experience tells you is usual or typical for children of this age and stage of development.
What I found there actually, Alistair, was sometimes I remember a particular case of a 3-year-old who was in an environment, again, it's an affluent family, where there was lots of domestic abuse, or they said couple conflict at the time. But I remember the child pointing fingers in people's faces and almost being quite angry. So that stood out straight away, to be honest, and pushing people. So it was quite unkind straight away. So for that child, that's learned modelling, the whole theory behind, modelling and Duckley, etc., that he's copying what he's seeing as normal. And clearly in this setting, it was known that where did this come from? And then this child is a bit spiteful. So there's lots of things, and we know children are born innocent and free. So it was those sort of things that you have to look at and obviously intervene and ask the right questions. And, that child had no empathy. Why? Because his father didn't have any. He was modelling what his father was doing. So we've just got to be really open-minded again and introduce professional curiosity. Again, being culturally competent about a child who's maybe from a different culture, different religion, etc. What would the family, norms be that we have to appreciate and understand? Do you understand? Yeah. And then work with. And also disguised compliance is another one, Alistair, where we saw that in the Daniel Pelker case, where the families engage with us, say the right things, but behind closed doors, harm is being done. So we've just got to be mindful, and we need to really wake up to what we found from the COVID cases. Those young children whose we relied on what the parents were telling us, took it as face value, when unfortunately they were subject to horrific harm where they're no longer with us.
And I think also as professionals, we have to be reflective on our own practice and understand that all of us see the world through a particular lens, and that lens has been created through our experiences of family, of childhood, positive and negative. But actually, there are quite diverse experiences that other families have that we need to be able to see. And if you only ever look through your lens, you only ever see what you are able to see. So that idea of being curious is great. I think also we need to be reflective. And also the idea of your understanding cultures that are different from your own. So whether that's religious culture, social culture, family culture, that if you work in a diverse setting, or if you work with children at all, understanding the other cultures that exist help you to have that breadth and that broader view, which is both allows you to see the hugely positive aspects of it, but also identify some of the more negative ones.
Exactly. And then also what I found was neglect was a big thing I saw in that 0 to 5 team, because of the dependence they had on others. And when we say neglect, we mean failure to meet the basic needs of a child. Hence, it was neglectful. And what we don't see, this is a real big kind of eye opener for our colleagues today, is, for example, would we know, for example, if a parent or carer, we know that not every child is with parents, had learning needs, had an addiction, whether it's drugs or alcohol, had mental health concerns, whether it's non-recent, recent, or now, and also anything else around just their own negative childhood experiences that then impacts on how they connect with their child. And I found that a lot in the job that I did in 0 to 5 in the child protection team. Is only as they can't meet their own needs, so how can they meet the needs of somebody else, being the child who's so dependent on them? So they're the things you're looking at rather than justifying it a lot. Because
Yeah.
sometimes, as a human being, you see an adult with a baby, so you assume that's happening. And with safeguarding, we tend to see the little driplets coming through that we excuse because we're talking to a parent who seems to be relating to us that things are okay, when actually we don't know the background of what's going on. Do you understand? So
I
that's what
do.
you're
And
starting to think about.
the psychology behind parenting, I read a really interesting book recently called Parenting for Humans, and it was all about the fact that when you then go on to have a child and become a parent, that there's a whole raft of things that you uncover, revisit, open
Yeah,
up, that either, and some of those can be massively positive, it's not all negative, but actually you don't know what or who you're going to be as a parent until
yeah,
you become a parent, and you can't really prepare for it because there's so much about your own parenting, how you were parented, that will be reawakened. So
absolutely.
again, it's making assumptions about how we parented as parents, how we were parented, and that other people's experiences are just not the same. I think what is positive is that mental health and awareness, and the fact that people are encouraged to and supported when they do talk about mental health and mental illness, is way more prevalent now than it was even a decade ago, when you would have tried to keep that covered up. But yet, often when you've got some mental health issue, you don't always know that you're experiencing mental health issues because you're the one that's experiencing. And when it comes to being in a relationship with a child, then that makes it even more complex. So again, I think we touched on it in the first episode. Relationships with families and parents are really important because, yes, we
Absolutely.
are concerned with the welfare of the child, but the bigger picture really helps us to understand what we're seeing when it's in front of us.
Absolutely. And also being non-judgmental. And the more we can empathize and understand that, it's really demanding being a parent. Sometimes it's overwhelming, and it's good to have a conversation so we can support you. So, you're setting that up. So when that parent is struggling with whether it's colic, or, whatever it might be, the sleepless nights, various things, you're there to support them because it's challenging and it's not a weakness.
And it's not, and also in today's era of social media and Instagram and Facebook and the rest, the parenting that you see in those little squares where everybody is just,
Perfect.
sitting under blossom trees, with beautiful, well-behaved babies, doesn't exist for anybody. But yet I know that because I'm old, but lots of people who are in that parenting moment, who are struggling, are thinking everybody else is having a great time and they're doing it really well, and it's just me. And also, because as parents or as humans, we don't often want to say, hands up, I'm really struggling here. People at
Mm.
the nursery gate, people at the school gate are often giving out that kind of, oh no, we're having a great time, life is good. So I think if we talk about some practical ways that settings can really support parents that might be,
Okay.
having
Great.
issues. Well,
Learn.
partly I think it's about being a setting that says, we will support you and
Yeah.
tries to normalize the reality of parenting.
So exactly that. So I mentioned in another one we just previously did around having a proactive approach. So creating a proactive approach to safeguarding is where on our website we kind of put a message out to say, we understand that being a parent can be quite demanding. We're always here to support you if you need to have a confidential conversation, the different stages. And also when we're generally talking to parents, they know that we care for them. They know that we're looking out for them. Thinking the unthinkable again, thinking about disguised compliance, what we learned from Daniel Pelker. This person seems to be telling me the right thing, but actually I'm questioning it. It doesn't add up to what's going on. Being culturally competent, professionally curious again. And again, don't make assumptions. So at times, do we accept what they tell us at face value? Really important to think about. And that regular training we have. So I always say to settings, yes, you do training, annual training, or Safeguarding Lead does a training every other year, but you need regular updates. Sign up to those newsletters. You're having safeguarding, understanding a safeguarding agenda in your meetings. Share loads, articles, bits of research, and also, having a safeguarding display board either in your staff room, but also in your reception area. So parents also can, at the moment, cost of living is affecting lots of people. So signposting people on a board to a help number for food banks or recycle places or things where they can get, different things going on. So it's really important that the more open we are and understanding on the front, the more inviting it is for the person who feels uncomfortable admitting it. So that's definitely something I would suggest. And the settings that I've know have done it have seen success in that.
And when you're talking about a safeguarding notice board or safeguarding kind of info pack for parents, this is not about saying to parents, these are how we spot the signs of safeguarding. This is about saying, we know for parents, these are common stresses.
Yes.
And we can't assume because our setting is here that these won't happen to our parents. So signposting to things like food banks, support
Yes.
for things like alcohol addiction, drug addiction, and having all of those things on the board. And that also clearly says it's about doing it with no judgment. So these are here to support you if you need them. They're not here to, make a negative judgment on you if you do. But I think, those signposts that are proactively saying to parents, if you're struggling, here's where to find the help. And of course, you can always come to chat to someone here.
So
They are way more useful than some of the displays you might find in entrance halls.
and we don't call it safeguarding in that concept of the parent. We'll say pastoral care. So there's words that we use like pastoral care or inclusion team or the welfare team. So the more we use with families on the front, forward facing the welfare team or welfare pastoral care, the more it looks about we're helping their welfare. But when we safeguarding is more for behind the scenes when it comes to obviously concerns. That makes sense. So this is kind of like the early help model that we're using, the model where, as soon as a problem emerges, we can actually signpost people to get support services in, from the crying baby to wetting, all those other things, speech delay, all those ones. And then obviously on top of that, the cost of living, as you mentioned, other things that they could be aware of. So it's definitely something where, again, in the staff room, be a safeguarding board because that's for staff, but on the front for the parents, it would be a pastoral
A
care.
support board.
Yeah.
It's like a realistic parenting board. It's a difficult job. Here's some support.
Yeah.
So and we'll touch on this again in some of the other episodes, but if a member of our team or we had a niggling doubt, a concern, and again, I think we've really clearly said it doesn't have to be that you've necessarily seen something occur that you've thought is a definite safeguarding red flag. This could be a feeling in your gut that something's not quite right. What's the first thing that I should do if I've got that niggling doubt or if I've seen something that I think is not quite right?
So obviously we note it, so we take note. So something doesn't feel right. Okay, I need to find out more. So you need to tune in to what you're concerned about. Is it a picture they've drawn? Is it a conversation? Is it something about a child? Okay, in your setting, because you've had training, you know how to alert the safeguarding lead. So we say you should do that without delay, which means you should inform the safeguarding lead first verbally, and then you write your notes up. So any concern we have to pass it on to our safeguarding lead immediately. If the DSL is not available, the designated safeguarding lead, then we go to the deputy safeguarding lead. So it's really important that we don't wait till the end of the day. We do it when the child's with us, because at times, depending on the concern, that child may not be allowed to go home because of potential social work decisions. So, conversations, expression in the sense of tell someone, and again, be very vigilant. And by having regular updates and keeping safeguarding as a golden thread in your setting, that's really good. Some people just do the once a year, it's in a folder. No, we want to see it in daily practice.
Yeah, that's a really interesting and valuable point to end this session on. It needs to be a golden thread. It's so important. It can't just be a once a year thing. It has to be in the very fibre of your setting, so that it kind of is almost subconscious in part of your daily practice, as well as conscious action, to support children. So in the next episode, we're going to be talking a bit more about policy, but also specifically about the role of that safeguarding lead, which is really important and can sound a little bit scary. And hopefully we're going to unpick some of those scary bits. So once again, Anne-Marie, that's been really interesting. Thank you so much, and can't wait to speak to you next time.
Thank you.
And I'd like to say a huge thank you to our guest, Anne-Marie, for joining us and providing such valuable insights. You've been listening to the TTS Talking Early Years podcast with me, Alistair Bryce-Clegg, and Anne-Marie Christian. And if you've been inspired by our conversation today, don't forget you can sign up via the link in our episode notes to be the first to hear about future episodes and access exclusive follow-up content, including ideas for your setting and links to loads of relevant resources.